Hi, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Impossible World Podcast. Today, we are not continuing with our previous story, contrary to what you might believe, and what I may have basically weirdly done. We are not just going to cover the weird story arc that we have over the last couple parts, many parts. This is a podcast. It's basically, that is hopefully what we will do for a good while until I kind of play out with an idea, although that idea still has I still have to introduce characters that I want to do in that whole weird series that we did. In fact, I'm wondering if we should really just rename it, because that's weirdly that, but also the Impossible World Podcast is essentially, the idea is that I'm just going to give you guys canon fodder to think about, with the vast variety of things that I'm watching and whatnot. It may spark an idea, or maybe if I'm just come up with an idea by myself without having seen anything. I can introduce that to you guys and play with it and see if you guys are enticed to do the same. So yeah, that's the whole idea behind the podcast. But today we are going to be doing a spin-off kind of variant of this. That idea is essentially in all this media, whether it be books, manga, anime, TV shows, wherever it may be, they basically have covered the hero's journey for the stealth person, the warrior, the berserker kind of, the this, the that. So every character that exists in D&D, I guess, or in a fantasy world, has basically been done, especially in anime, to where a shield hero is basically the idea of, okay, well, what is a cool story? But if we want to be creative about this, what if it's about the least played character in any MMO, which is, of course, the defender, the shield character, the tank, I guess. It's the least played role, apparently, in all MMOs and whatnot. So let's go ahead and take that premise and see if we can make it interesting, as well as put a character in there that makes it interesting, period. And of course, Shield Hero is a very critically acclaimed anime, which is also fantastic. I would highly advise watching it. Now, there's also an anime that I like a lot. It's about an archer. That's cool. There's one of that. And of course, there's Overlord, which is very awesome, very cool, and that's basically of the mage. Now, there's a lot of shows like this, but there's one that hasn't gotten really touched at all, or if it is, it's kind of like this really generic side character that's adorable, neat, but just kind of uninteresting, because they're like a priest or a paladin or something weird, and just like a very annoying knight who's just super virtuous, and that's it. And of course, that character archetype is the support, the healer, if you will. That basically, I haven't seen a single show that has given that character a proper shake. And in my head, I didn't really know how to do it either. I mean, you could do something kind of cool where instead of it being like this paladin, or not paladin, sorry, this beautiful priest in this fantasy world, where she somehow she's so pure and she can heal things, off Goblin Slayer. That's kind of it, except, yeah, she's like a kid, and it's always real dark and evil, and it's just sad. You hope that she isn't in this world, but she is, and But even in that show, she's this very pure priest. So then you're okay, well, if I wanted to make things a little bit different and interesting, what if we made her a punk rock chick who could heal the shit out of people, and it wasn't just basic healing, because that's what most things do. It's I can repair your damaged body, but instead you could make a person be okay, well, what if it was a healer that got super into healing, and you gave her a bunch of types of ways to give her people armor, fortify skin mail, or scale mail, sorry, skin mail, scale mail, and all these lovely things, so that you're boosting that character up, so that she can just be more than what she is in almost every other game. So that's a way you could do it. So by the way, that's the idea. That's the question for today, is how do you make a good story about a support character being the main protagonist? And to me, I came up with this idea. So that was something that I thought it would be kind of fun to play with, and we could still play with it. But this, to me, is something I think could be really cool. And the idea that I had was basically, I looked at the support hero and I found the problem with the support hero in the real sense of what the problem would be. So in most scenarios, when we hear of a support healer, it's a healer. It's a person that basically just repairs your HP when you're low health. They can bring it all the way to full, and then you can go back into the fight. So not only is that kind of cool, to put a person in a world where people don't understand the strength of a support, but why do people not understand the strength of a support? Because pain sucks. In the real world, and even in a fantasy world, if you got ripped to shit, like you were just stabbed, bleeding, you were on the cuff of death, your arm got lopped off, all this horrible stuff, someone healing you would be nice, but the pain, you still have to go through the traumatic, horrible pain, right? So you probably go for a tank that like can just soak up damage, his arm, like basically blows just bounce off of his armor, things like that, right? So in a fantasy setting, that kind of makes more sense. I also thought, okay, well that makes it even cooler for not necessarily a main character, but a side character. So my idea was essentially, and again, this probably has been done in 1,000 other things, and I hope that this kind of idea gets taken by anime or a manga or something. There's like an anime based on this, kind of like covering the role of a support in this way. So my idea was essentially, okay, well, what if we, and there could be a bunch of different things. It could be like a guild. It could be, I don't know, just an adventurer going throughout the world. It could be an isekai where this person's pulled to this other world and specs in a weird way. It doesn't matter. But of course, the one that I like the most, that kind of makes the most sense, is like kind of a training military base or a school. And of course, I like the school thing because I like Harry Potter and it poisons my brain. And I thought that's the coolest place to kind of evolve a character and have them move forward. But essentially, I think it'd be really cool for there to be a story, and this is a constant trope with an anime where you go to this school, whether it's a demon school or a fucking monster school or a school for magic or a school for mecha, whatever it fucking is. It's a constant trope. But to me, I still want that trope because I think this is the best place for it. But essentially, for it to be about this main character who, to me, is this like punk rocker again shit, just to kind of break the norm for what a healer is in most shows, where it's like this priest who's pure, and instead it's this badass punk rocker chick with eyeliner, a pierced nose or something, and is just a blast. But she is completely based on support. Now, what that could be, she could be like forced into it to where maybe she has a curse or a defect to where she can't actually manage any sort of destructive spell. So of course she wants to be, maybe she had a traumatic experience that made her want to be a person that could help people. Or it could just be that she's obsessed with healing magic. She thinks it's the coolest. And I feel like that'd be a more genuine kind of take, is instead for it to be this traumatic experience, which happens in most shows, and for it to just be like she's seen a person who's like a knight on the front lines who's covered in blood and scars, and he's like, I fucking did it, I'm a hero, go team. But then, maybe she witnessed this event of like this knight being amazing, but then the thing that she ended up focusing on is the healer that made him stop dying. Or maybe it was the healer that instead of, standing atop a mountain of bodies, showing how powerful he was, it was the medics running around keeping everyone else alive, like innocent civilians that were living. Now both are important, but most people just focus on like the knight standing atop a mountain claiming how virtuous he is or whatnot. But instead, she's seen this like humble medic picking up this man, rushing him into a car and healing him or whatever, or rushing him off to the sidelines of the battle, healing him, and just focusing on that. While death and mayhem is going on around him, he's somehow focusing and able to do that. Regardless, that's the take that I would like. The point that we're trying to get at is that there's this person who is all in to support magic. Now, how I see the story play out in my head is she arrives to this new school to practice magic or whatever, but when she gets there, I would like there to be like a time jump, and for it to basically show that no one there appreciates, understands, or values the power of a support healer. So that to me would be amazing if that was the whole premise of like she's in this thing, everyone basically treats her as cannon fodder, to where she's like you can't deal damage, you're just heal me, well whatever, we'll use you as a pawn to like get aggro on people, and that way you can be of value. Like someone just that she just gets her completely just shit on by these horrible people at this school who have this glorified perception of knights and power and damage, right? And for no one to basically make proper use of her power, I suppose. So to me, this is where things kind of get different. Where yes, we're trying to cover like a healer and whatnot, right? But like I said, the problem with the healer is that you still experience pain. So here comes this other character. And this to me is where we could go a bunch of different ways. But for whatever reason, I see this other like punk rocker chick as like this nice animation style. Looks very, very cool and like clean, I guess. But then there's this other character that I would love if it was like an anime or a manga, that he looks like just different. Like the way he's drawn is not like super like masculine, but just rougher, I guess, like more just different. And I would want him to be this is also a side thing. I want this character to be basically, how do I put it, like an untraditional DPS / tank. Because I like that in shows. I like when you take you subvert expectations. So you see something that you constantly see in shows where you see the warrior and he's just yoked to shit and he's got these 2 fucking battle axes and he's just a meathead. Instead, I would want that character to be the inverse of that. So I'd want him to be kind of maybe a smaller build, maybe look more slender, really fucking fast, and to be kind of analytical about when he goes in. Maybe not even that. Maybe we want him to be a bit nuts. But regardless, I would love for this character to have something that basically is damaged nerves, or his one like special redeeming trait is that he can push through anything. So that he basically can experience any pain, and as long as he has a goal, everything else bleeds away. And for that to be kind of like his trait, and we could even get more unique and make it so that the world has these traits that exist within everybody, like maybe like a curse or a trait or just some one thing. Maybe that's that one girl's trait, is that she has really good powerful healing, but she can't use destruction magic or something like that. Regardless, boom. So the thing that to me made this idea like, oh, this could be so fucking sick, is if you have this beautiful art style, say if it's in an anime, you have this nice art style, and then there's this person who somehow, some way, she gets partnered with him. Now, because the main character has the trait of like blind goal, that he'll like, as long as he has something in his sightlines, he can push through anything almost. So I seen this scene in my head where it shows like the absolute brutality of what like kind of combat in this world would be. To where this dude who doesn't wear any armor because he wants to be really fast, so he's getting sliced up to shit. His arms slashed, his like ribs are open. Maybe you can see his like thigh muscles and shit because he's just getting wrecked. But this dude fights like an animal. As long as he has something in his goal, he doesn't care. He can kind of chew through any of the pain. But he also partners himself with this healer person because he knows that that's his weakness, is that if he does get hit, it really hurts and it slows him down. So I want this to be kind of that moment. And again, the scene that I seen in my head was this dude just ripped to shit, broken, but him keep moving forward, like this impossible rage. And I would love for there to be this like art style change in that midst of that moment where he is in battle, and for it to be like Berserk. If you guys have ever seen the anime or the manga or anything that is Berserk, where that show just has this art style that just seems like grit, like just true grit. I would love for the art style to pivot when he's on screen, to show you how like visceral it can be and how like just a unrelenting force he is. But for him to only be able to be that because of the main character, which is she's this healer that picks him up from nothing. But with that being said, he's also the only person that sees the value, and also I want him to embrace what it is to be a true DPS / tank / whatever you want to word him as, when it comes to playing with a support, which the DPS and or the tank and or whatever should constantly make sure the support is okay. Why? Because if the support falls, you all fall. Also, it doesn't matter how much damage you can deal. If innocents or blood's pooling out of them, then you need something that can repair them. So therefore, they're the main priority that should exist in this kind of like squadrant or something, which is something that I feel like I would love for that to be the super misconception of this world or this academy, is that damage is everything. But also, no, it's absolutely not everything. Like damage means nothing when you're surrounded with a bunch of innocents that are dying. Like what can throwing a fireball that does XYZ damage matter when everyone else is around you is dying? And that's what you're supposed to do, is protect these people, but you can't because the damage has already happened. So yeah, you need someone that can repair them, to piece them back together. So to me, I would love for that to be the kind of contentions in the world of this kind of idea. But the idea is you have this one person who is looked down upon at the school, who is treated like shit, who maybe has a curse that only allows her to do healing stuff. But then you have this person that perfectly synergizes with her, but not only that, but he recognizes fast what it is to be a proper teammate to that healing thing, which is to keep them safe, to chew through any sort of pain that they will basically get inflicted onto them and put it onto you. So that's what I kind of would like to mess around with, is this guy who kind of is like a DPS but plays with the idea of being a tank, even though he doesn't wear armor. So he'll like basically full on, I don't know, someone swings a sword, he'll grab it, it'll break through 3 fingers, but he'll catch it on the last finger, and then he'll headbutt someone, and he'll bite into their jaw and fucking rip, or just something violent and brutal, and then the support's behind him healing him. And for there to be this cool moment where maybe they randomly get pinned as partners, and he's known for being like just a violent berserker, but he finds out that his weakness is that he constantly gets dropped. Like, he's this violent berserker, but the way he plays isn't like armoring myself up and using a great axe to fuck someone up. Instead, it's being really light and moving fast and securing this like kill and letting my rage push me anywhere I want. Or we can mess around with the idea of, again, I have this goal to get to the end, to win, and then every other kind of pain just falls away because of my ultimate goal, you know? But for that to be the case where he's just getting chewed, like ripped apart, but then there's this healer picking him back up, and then he's like, oh, okay, I'm not dead, and I'm still in the fight. Like, yes, this hurts like crazy. Or maybe he's a freak who has nerve damage, and that is what makes them the perfect combo. Because that's something that I always feel like is not addressed in this premise of like the DPS and the healer, is the idea of you still experience pain. So even though you can heal yourself, yes, that's cool, but it doesn't like, yeah, like to overcome incredible pain is something, especially if you have like, well, it's weird with like Deadpool or Wolverine, where it's not like they have damaged nerves. Their body is brought back to complete health, which is like your nerves are firing everything you should feel. So I feel like that should be focused on, is how much of a problem that can be for most people. Like maybe Wolverine and Deadpool are just fucking mechs, like just mercs who are just grizzled and they can just chew through pain. They can just manage it better than most. But I feel like the vast majority of people would get stabbed and be like, oh my god, and you just start to shut down, even though you're like, oh, I'm gonna get healed. Or you'd have the fear of getting stabbed again, because even though you were healed, you would still wince from that pain or freak out from the impact, a flinch. That's what I'm trying to say, flinch from the past. Like, you are scarred by your past, unless you somehow find a way to chew through it, which to me I think would be nice to have as the like not main character but side character. But again, for the whole show to be kind of through the eyes of this woman, this healer, but also for her to be endearing. Like, that's something that I want so badly, is I want her to be like this fun, joking punk rocker chick who is like proud, but also like the perfect idea of a realistic healer, like someone who says, well, no, if we just go in there guns blazing, more will die than will be saved. So we have to find a way to do this properly. Like, and again, I think I would like that to be the tone of like the whole class that she's in, is people are like, well, let's just go in there, we'll fuck those people up, we'll use all this damage to mess them up. But then you end up just basically dealing a lot more damage, and the collateral could be monumentous. Where she's like, okay, well, fuck, my classmates are idiots, and they're just pushing forward regardless of these people being okay. All right, I guess, and then maybe she works with the main character to kind of focus on saving as many as they possibly can. And I don't know what happens after that, but I feel like you could put any of these two characters in any situation and it kind of come out badass, especially if that's the perception of the whole story is being seen and kind of voiced by this main character, which is this healer. But then like the badass crazy moments are seen through this like just freak, like this freak of nature who can somehow stomach this intense pain, but also keeps her safe, because that's the whole gimmick, that's the whole role of a healer, is to heal people, but then you lack sufficient defense. And then we could get even cooler, and we could get like to the latter half, after they're already pretty deep and they already know how to really manage each other, to where we start essentially making the healer in a way a DPS, which can be really fun. Like, you can mess around with the idea of, okay, well, what if instead of just healing you, I store your damage. So I store your damage, and then I can release it back at an enemy with this maybe like white spell or something. And to me, it reminds me of it's a Harry Potter, what do you call it? It's when I'm not sure if it's in the fourth thing, when he fucks up Malfoy or something in the Yeah, he fucks at Malfoy in like the bathroom, and he just like this white wisp, but that white wisp just like puts shrapnel in his chest, and it's just like, oh yikes, you know. But yeah, I like, to me that'd be a fun thing to do, and that's something that like a lot of these shows that I love so much, like Reincarnates as Slime, who messes with like the idea of a summoner / leader king build, and then you have Overlord, which messes with summoners, and then you have like the Archer anime that I really like. Not like the Archer like TV show that's like a comedy, but like there's a literal Archer isekai kind of show, except it's not an isekai, it's just kind of like a fantasy show where this guy's an archer. Cool. Anyways, and then there's like the warrior archetype. There's a bunch, but to me there's not a support healer, and I don't know what it is, but to me there's something so badass about like subverting expectations, specifically with that shit. Like for instance, one of my favorite characters in video games, in Battleborn, there was this character named, oh, I'm so terrible, I don't remember her name, man. She was great. Voice in my head, if you remember it, say it.
Shannon Oryx.
Cool. She was basically the idea of, she like made a deal with this space demon, essentially, and she like, by make a deal, I mean she basically blackmailed him into working for her by taking his like core, making it into a belt, and then wearing it, which means basically the demon monster has to keep her safe in order for him to live. So not a great deal on his part, on like him receiving good stuff. Regardless. This basically had this like badass tomboy chick who had this fucking demon like rib cage surrounding her, and whenever she would move, it would move too. So it's like a mech. So it's like this demon space rock mech thing that was so cool for an idea for me, because normally you have like the petite. Whenever you see a woman fight in like a fantasy game, they're always like, I have a saber, or I'm a barbarian, and I look skinny, but I also have like shredded muscles, and I use an axe. That's all we ever see it as. So to see like this medic that's like a punk rocker chick would be so fucking sick to me as well. But not only that, to have to really jive with the main character, who is this like, again, I see him as like a berserker. But the problem with the berserker is that he dies. Like he has incredible damage, incredible power, can like kind of weasel around anyone's defense. But his problem is that he like, you can only lifesteal for so much, and if an enemy reaches a higher damage point than your lifesteal, then you just die. Whereas if you had a person who maybe could just pick you up from nothing, you would almost be immortal, or a god. But that only is if you also have the addition of protecting that thing, because that's oftentimes the thing that happens in almost every video game, is the support is the only reason why your dumbass is still alive, but nobody fucking just like supports the support. Everyone's just like, holy shit, dude, I'm on a fucking 18 kill streak. I did it. I'm so great. Oh, I immediately died. Well, that was cool. Yeah, you died, you fucking idiot. I was keeping you alive the entire time. The entire time. I was also giving you damage buffs. I was also like messing with shit, like stunning a person so that you didn't get dunked on in that moment that made you able to secure 3 kills. And then I get revived, and I'm like, okay, that was pretty good. We're winning. I'm gonna do that again. But then you completely detach from me because you're like, oh fuck, I'm gonna get so many kills now. And then you start like pushing forward way more than you can handle, and I can't keep up with you, and then you're like, why am I dying like every 3 seconds? That was really good, and now I'm really bad. Well, yeah, you're really bad because you didn't fucking recognize why you're strong, which is entirely depicted on your healer, because that's the reason why you're not getting dropped in 10 seconds, is because I'm repairing you or debuffing an enemy that allows you to drop them in 10 seconds. So to me, as a person who plays a support so much in video games, I would love if there's like this punk rocker chick who just says it as it is and just shits on people who are stupid in this instance. And I think it'd be for an anime, because that's why I see it as. I see it as like this kind of anime, because every kind of show that I like is kind of through this like isekai filter of like, hey, go to a fantasy world and fuck around with some shit. Or, hey, this fantasy world exists and maybe have a curse and let's follow this person's journey. But to me, it'd be really cool having this like cute punk rocker chick who's who, what do you call it, just shits on people, who like calls people out, but we're behind, like you can somehow win the main characters or the audience over, which I think would be pretty easy, like doing it the way I said, where we kind of show the main character, we show her going to this school, and then we show people basically shitting on her, like just not like using that her abilities properly, and kind of like using her as a guinea pig or as a like a, what do you call it, distraction, so that they can run or that they can kill her, like she could just be cannon fodder because she's useless or something. So for her to be like E rank, only because people are shitty to her, and then for her to find out that there's this other dude who's just like a psycho when it comes to battle, and they end up being partnered together, and he ends up just having this innate instinct to protect that because he realizes that he hasn't fallen because he's not a selfish idiot, hopefully. And then them going from like E rank to fucking S rank in like no time. And I think it'd be even nicer if that was always kind of the general gist, is like this dude always like completely recognizes that you're the only reason why I'm alive. You're amazing. But for the entire school to be so up their own ass that they are like, it must be this guy's fighting style that he's so good, or the reason why his impossible will to live, which is kind of correct, but is also completely disregards the support. So I'd love for that to be the contention, and for like the only reason why I want that to be a contention is because I feel like it could have a lot of humor moments where she just straight up like, what the fuck are you guys talking about? I'm the whole reason why he lived. And then the main character being like, I agree. That's the only reason why I lived. And then for, for the arrogant people around them to be like, yeah, whatever. And then you move forward, right? So to me, I really want to see that executed in a show. Basically, I really want the support to be given credence. And again, you could do so many fun things where there's so many abilities that exist within video games that are so valued when it comes to support. Like especially, I'm playing a game right now called Bleeding Edge. I'm going a little bit too fast. Let's drink some coffee. Let's chill out. I'm playing a game called Bleeding Edge. Okay, very good game. I'm enjoying it heavily. But it kind of reinvoked the cool abilities that could exist outside of just dealing damage. Like one of them is, okay, well, what if I put a bubble on you? You know, I put a bubble on you, and that completely makes you basically immune for a long time. That can make the difference between winning an entire like 6v6 fight just by putting a bubble on somebody, and then that person can easily melt down that, and then it becomes a 6v5, and then you keep bulldozing, so it's a 5v3 because you keep bulldozing, and yeah. Or maybe you put down a pike into the ground that ends up healing all of you. But not only that, but it debuffs everyone else around you. Now, because everyone is so arrogant and not used to like this like pike glowing in the ground that is making them feel weaker and dizzy, that's also healing your allies that are in the midst of this kind of battle. Instead of breaking down that pike so that they can now move on to dealing proper damage and not getting damaged over time, instead the assholes just attack your people and not realizing it. Your allies are getting healed, they're staying in the fight, and your enemies are getting weaker and they're getting damaged. So to me, it's like that's something so cool to mess around with in a world that has so many ego shitty people, like the worst kind of DPS, the worst kinds of tanks, the worst kinds of all those people. To introduce support mechanics and to not only that, but to have somebody that recognizes how overpowered and broken they are, which is both the main character and the side character, that is her like partner. That to me would be so unbelievably sick. And like another one of the coolest support abilities is the idea that like you can put a debuff on somebody, but dude, a debuff can be the difference between, and I would love for this to be kind of like a part in that show if this was ever to be created, to where there's like this big badass DPS / tank that found a way to kind of be a tank and also a DPS at the same time, but then you the main character puts a debuff on her. Maybe she gets a new skill and she's like, oh, this is cool, I want to use it, I wonder if it's any good, and she puts the debuff on him and then just gets dropped by like one basic ass attack because they didn't realize that the debuff was super big. Or maybe she can stack it like 5 times, so it's 20 damage, okay, 40 damage, okay, now 60 damage, and it's like, oh shit. Now you're gonna get dropped into hits. So to me, that could be really fun, and I would love if there was a show that did something like that, because to me, man, I feel like no show does that. And every time I see like a healer in any show, it's always really weak too. Like that's something that annoys me, is that like the healer is also very bad at healing. Like you'll see like a person who's like, yeah, I'm a mage and I can do some healing magic, and then she like walks up to someone. Like that's also the case in Goblin Slayer, which is the healer basically like stands over somebody with her hands out, and then like it takes like an hour for her to fully repair them, you know? Where to me, I want to see, like, what I really want is to see a person who has just like basically like Berserk, like the main character Berserk, but not like a 40-year-old man, but instead like an 18-year-old. So a person who is just completely driven by fury, whatever it is, or maybe just a goal of win. that he will not stop fighting. So he has his rib cage, his ribs are showing, his fucking face is blown off. And all you can hear is his growl of his teeth, blood leaking everywhere, face covered in blood and all this shit. And even though he's so damaged, he's 1 HP, but this 1 HP person is still fighting. And also that's something to note is whenever you're like 1 HP in a video game is just nothing basically, but in the real world that would mean that like the thread that is between you living and dying, which would mean you'd basically be immobilized, like your leg would be blown off, you'd be hobbling towards somebody. So the idea of that, of finding a person that can operate at 1% with like your arms blown off or your leg shredded completely, and you're still hobbling over to somebody and like biting into their neck and ripping it out, or like just grabbing, maybe your fucking arm gets blown off and your bone is sticking out, and you just ram your spiked bone into someone's fucking head, like just like nightmare level fighting shit, like just violence, just pure disregard for your own well-being violence. But then, even though you're like completely down for the count, there's this person that like casts this spell or whatever, like this little tether that links to you, and that little tether completely starts healing your entire body, bringing it back to full. So you go from like a zombie looking thing to complete premium you in the span of like 10 seconds. And then for the main character to basically be like, this is broken, like this is nuts, which is the case. Most healers, if done correctly, are stupid in that sense, because, and especially in like hero shooters, you can die so fast. You can get melted by like 2 characters focusing you. 2 DPSs melt the tank pretty fast. But a healer can repair that in seconds and make it so that, okay, well, in order for you to take down my tank, now you need to take down the healer first and then focus on the tank. But it'd be cool to show a world that no one really acknowledges that. No one really acknowledges the power of a healer. Therefore, that is why this team, these two together, are like impossible, like just gods amongst men. But with that being said, I also would like to give credence to this other character, this dude, because I don't think it would work if you didn't have this idea. And I think that'd be cool too to mess with, where like her specific buff would just be for healing and not like applying debuffs and stuff like that. Maybe she gets that later on, but for that to basically show that like, okay, it's not like just healing would work for everybody, because everyone eventually has like fear and has a fear of pain and has hesitation. But for this other character to be broken in a sense, and to not feel those things, or to have a way of getting past those things. And that could be a cool story in itself of like, okay, well, this is the main character story. Well, throughout the whole show, you would maybe recognize these horrible things that happened to this person that made him fight the way he does, or be able to manage how painful things can be, and all that kind of stuff. So to me, ladies and gentlemen, that is what I would love to see. And again, I can't stress enough how whenever there's a battle, it goes from like happy fun times animation style to like this person again, like Berserk, ribs showing because he just got stabbed 3 times, or he just got a firebolt launched at his stomach and it blew off some of his rib cage flesh, and he also, his face is covered in blood because he fights like an animal, and he just keeps chewing through things in the most like brutal carnal way imaginable. And that's why I think the art style should change to like a more gritty Berserk thing. And then for her I would love for her character model to always stay the same, like this cool kind of clean punk rocker thing, but the world around her is like terrible. It's like that Berserk art style of like everything's gritty, gross, there's blood everywhere, the main character's drenched in blood, all this crazy shit, and all that would be fucking dope. And then there's so many things that you can mess around with the whole idea of a healer, like so many abilities, so many kind of ideas. Like Return to Sender is a good one, where okay, I'd apply, instead of applying a bubble or a shield to you, I'm going to instead apply something that basically absorbs all of the damage that you're taking and allows me to send it to another person. But you still have to experience that damage. But luckily the main character can chew through that, like I was saying. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is essentially the idea that I want to see so badly. Is I don't think we've seen a proper support level anime yet, or like a show or a book. Maybe there's a book about it actually. But again, I kind of want the anime treatment or manga treatment of the idea, because I feel like I don't know why I don't read a lot, so that could be the problem. But I don't see a lot of subverting expectations like I do in anime. I see that constantly, where like Welcome to Demon School is a great example, but like where they take an idea and they're like, okay, well, instead of it just being, you know, something that we've seen before, which is vampire bad or melee fighter, somehow slay 1,000 dudes and not have a single drop of blood on him. Cool. Well, what if instead it was super brutal and like honestly violent? But what if the character was also kind instead of just being like this evil berserker? You know, what if he was very, very sweet and kind? But maybe he had a switch that he flipped and then he just went into like kill mode and went nuts. And then you start messing around with cooler ideas. Or what if we had an anime where we covered a support character and it wasn't like this priestess who is super virtuous and never swears and never says anything and constantly loves God all the time. God is everything, and it's just like, okay, well, the person that's keeping you alive is in fact that guy, not the God guy, but okay, sure. Point being, to me that'd be a pretty cool testament and or a showcase of something. But then again, I'm sure there's a book about there somewhere. It can't be like the first idea. Again, I think there could be a book or an anime or a manga, that exists with like the support healer, but I don't think in that way. I don't think there's one where it's like it subverts your expectations of what a support is, but also shows the ideas of what support is in a really cool way as well. Like how fucking OP a support can be if somebody keeps him safe. Like especially in Bleeding Edge, that is the difference between winning and losing in that game, because they gave so much healing to the supports, which you should, because otherwise the support is kind of just the least played character and is sad and does nothing. Also, it would be cool for there to be like a difference, maybe in like the shows the difference between a support that just plays the support to have an easy job, and then a support that plays to change the complete and utter flow of the battlefield. I would love for those two different types, because there is like the healer that is lazy and you're like half health for 90% of the game and he's like, oh right, heal, cool, and that's it, right? But then there's the healer that's like heal, low health, use ability to dash over, heal, debuff that person, okay, put down a pike, all right, cool, put down a wall to block you off, all right, cool, put a lifesteal on your weapons, cool, because you're about to go into this battle and that's gonna help you. And then you're just like this person who's just like a fucking psychopath who's learning all this shit. I would love for that to be the case, and for our main character to eventually become that, where she's just super anal retentive about like doing all of her little tiny things that completely change the battlefield. But ladies and gentlemen, I don't really have much else to say besides that. Again, I thought that would be such a cool idea to mess around with. Is like, again, and it's something that is so weird, but you could have so much fun with, especially if, to me, it's kind of like the only kind of thing that kind of works is Fairy Tail. Fairy Tail has Lucy, who is like basically you see the whole world through her eyes. But Natsu is still kind of like the main character, but Lucy is kind of the main character that we're seeing everything kind of through. And I would kind of like there to be probably a little bit more of a equaling out factor, where both this one healer girl is, and then the main character is also like kind of two main characters. But that's the tricky thing, is you wouldn't want to make the show about this like DPS guy, because I think the DPS dude that I talked about is only cool because of her, is because he has the will to push through the pain, but also a way of fighting that is optimal for being at like really, really low HP and being able to be brought back up, you know? Whereas again, like adding a touch of realism to this idea in the world, where you have this person who is, when you get down to like 50 HP, who's to say that that's not like an arm blown off, or like you're completely thrashed, or you're burning alive, you know? Like having lower and lower HP would mean literal damage to your body. Rather than an MMO, you can always do the same shit that you would normally do if you have 1 HP, because it's a video game. But in reality, this would be like the downside to a healer, and maybe even the healer recognizes that at some point, and then she casts like, or maybe that's what it is, maybe the main character realizes that that's the problem, so he buys a special artifact or necklace that specifically has the most unused effect in that world, which is numb nerves, which is basically just numbing your body so that you can keep going even though your arm's gone, and you can keep fighting and shit like that. But to me, this also was a good way to show the character type, which there's not too many shows that kind of showcase this character, which is the Berserker, which is the character that is just violence incarnate, just moving forward. There is some shows that like show like, oh, I turned into a demon, or I have a rage mode, and then that's it, But it's like, oh, I'm a fighter or a mage, but then when I get all crazy, and then I all damage. And it's just like, no, it's not what I meant. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for your time. This is not the longest of videos, but it didn't have to be, because this is just a quick little baby idea. I thought it could be really fun. Let me know what your guys' ideas are about this, because to me, maybe there's a cooler way to do it. Maybe there's like a way that you could do it where, oh, I don't know. You guys on the Discord were showing me some weird shit. Or not Discord, we were streaming, that's what it was. And someone was explaining to me a wonderful book that they're reading where someone like gets reincarnated as a holy sword in like a different world. And yeah, that's the premise. And maybe it's like you get reincarnated as like a weird fucking, I don't know, belt buckle. But that belt buckle can heal you 100%. So then maybe it's about like a berserker in that sense, where you have like this belt buckle talking to the main character while he's getting healed because of this thing, and I feel like that's less interesting because they're not like human flaw having to like, oh, this character's got shit on by the world because of what she can do. She still keeps pushing forward. Eventually meets a person that basically is the antidote to her. She's not even a problem. And I think that'd be something nice to kind of recognize, is that the main character completely or not the main character, the side character completely recognizes that like, this is so stupid. Like everyone should have their hands up when they're picking a partner because of how much of a difference you can make in the grand scheme of things. To me, that'd be a really cool kind of endearing moment for like both the audience to see how much shit she's taken, but then also for there to be like, oh, we're rooting for this guy too because he's on the same side, kind of thing. Regardless, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. Let me know what ideas you guys got, or what kind of like things that exist in like the fantasy MMO kind of idea thing that haven't been given a proper shake, because I definitely think the support role definitely hasn't been given a proper shake. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. Hopefully you guys enjoy the rest of your day. You're absolutely lovely and fantastic. Subscribe button over there to my right, as well as further that way. Thank you so much for listening, people out there. Much love and goodbye.